slowly, but also we're going to have 3 parts of my talk. We're actually going to have 4 parts. I'm going to speak for 3 parts, and then at the end, we're going to have an open question and answer session. But at the end of each of the parts that I'm going to talk about, we'll also have an opportunity to ask questions. Okay? So let me give you a little introductory information. First of all, I am a very old person. Well, maybe I've been a lawyer for 40 years. This is my 40th year being a lawyer. I'm turning 65 years old this year. Okay. So, and I've basically been doing some of the same things for 40 years. I consider myself to be a real estate lawyer dealing with property, real estate. But it's a little broader than that. I handle contract disputes, I handle lease disputes, I handle landlord-tenant disputes. I am a litigator. So some lawyers like to be in court, and some lawyers like to be in the office and just make papers up. I like to be in court. I like talking with juries and judges and winning cases. I've also been to the United States Supreme Court. 22 years ago, I won a very big case at the Supreme Court, and the decision was issued tomorrow on June 26 in 2002. It's called Lawrence versus Texas, and it is a case at the Supreme Court. But we're not going to talk about that today because that's not related to what you're dealing with. I am also, today's purpose is to give you some basic information. I'm going to present some information and I'm going to answer questions for you. But please understand that I am not your lawyer here today. And I'm not giving you specific legal advice for your circumstances. And I know people are watching this at some point in the future. And so it's important that everybody understands that because the law is so technical, that if you have a legal problem, you should make an appointment and talk with a lawyer to get legal advice for you. And don't think that what I'm telling you is, oh, now I know the answer to your legal problem. Okay? But I'm going to give you some general concepts and some general information to help you have some better information today. But today is not the only day that I'm going to be here. I'm coming back in 1 month on July 30th. And the topic for that talk is going to be about estate planning and wills and probate. That's when someone dies, what to do. Also, I'm going to talk about powers of attorney and guardianships. That's going to be a different topic. And I'm going to also, for those people who come to the program, we are going to actually make a will for you that is a legal will on that day. Okay? So by the time you leave, if you want a will, you'll be able to have one in that class. So that's July 30th, the last Wednesday of July at 6 o'clock. Okay, but for today, we're going to talk about small businesses and some basic information about that. The 3 parts that I'm going to speak to you about today is starting your business, operating your business, and then selling and closing your business. Okay, that's the 3 parts that I'm going to talk to you about today. This person back. So I also, let me just share with you. So I have my own law firm. I have 2 law partners. My other law partners, the other one does similar to me, real estate work, and the third partner, he does immigration and criminal law. So maybe one day, if you want to have an immigration talk, we could do that as well, but not today and not next month. Okay. We also have associate attorneys. We have about 13 people working at our law firm, and we're located over in the Galleria area. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. With the first topic, and that is, how do you start a business? Also, it's important for you to know in what I'm speaking about today, I am not a CPA. I am not a tax person. I hire a CPA to do my taxes. We get people who know about taxes to do that. So please understand that I cannot answer any tax questions. That's a whole specialized area, but I am a lawyer and I can talk to you about legal things. So there are some basic types of businesses. The easiest business is called a sole proprietorship. That's where if I want to have a business, I just go out and make money. I make money as a lawyer. I have an Airbnb house that I rent out, and that's a sole proprietorship. I could have whatever I want to do. It's as long as you're doing it yourself, so as long as you're doing it yourself as a single person. Sole proprietorship means one person. There are many people who have someone they trust and they go into business with that person. That once you make it two people, it is now a partnership. And you don't need to have anything in writing to be a partnership. It can be verbal, oral, etc. What is a partnership? A partnership is an agreement to share the profits and the losses. You don't need anything in writing. You can do it with your spouse, with your friend, with your child, with a stranger. In case, and I handle a lot of disputes where people go into business with someone else and things do not work out. And what we have to try to figure out is, okay, what were the terms of this agreement? As you can imagine, verbal agreements are very hard to enforce because what you think the deal was is not what your partner thinks it was. And you do not have to have a written agreement. Now, as a lawyer, what I'm going to tell you is to get a written agreement because many businesses fall into hard times, and having something in writing helps you figure out how you're going to solve the problems. So if you and your partner put an agreement together, that is what we would call a partnership agreement. Now, there are all types of partnership agreements. Sometimes it involves real estate. Sometimes you and your friend or your spouse or your child or your brother or your sister have an idea. And they say, look, let's put our money together and buy this house and fix it up and sell it for a profit. Isn't that a great idea? Really? Doesn't that sound exciting and like we're going to make a lot of money? And, and so people do that. They put their money together. Now, sometimes people don't have the same amount of money. So they might say, look, I'll put the money in, or I'll put in most of the money, and you hire the people and do the work, or you do the work. You come in and you do the carpentry or whatever it is. Again, that sounds like a good idea, right? No, it's not a good idea because I may not think you're working hard enough. Then what am I going to do? Or you may run into some more expenses that we didn't think about. And you're going to say to me, you need to put some more money in. And sometimes I do. And sometimes I don't. I may not have it. And then we've now bought this land. Now what are we going to do with it? We've already kind of invested our time or our money. And now guess what? We're not friends anymore. But both of our names, possibly both of our names, or maybe one of our names. What if my name's the only name on there? And your name's not there because I have better credit or she has. These are all real life situations, ladies and gentlemen. That's why when you have written agreements, they tend to get a little long because as lawyers, we try to think about all the different things that might happen. Very often does a business go the way you think it's going to go in the beginning. And for people that put all their money in and they don't have anything for problems or contingencies, it gets stressful. People can't afford, because guess what? We have a mortgage, we got to pay the bank. And if we don't pay the bank, they're going to foreclose on us. And so this will be a good thing because I know you want to talk about LLCs and we'll talk about that in a moment. Let's say we have either a sole proprietorship or a partnership and we can't continue to pay for the business and it goes out of business, but the bank wants to get its money, so they foreclose and sue us. Now they're going to get a judgment against us individually and try to come after us, try to see what else we might have. So what we could have done is to form an entity so that when we are finished investing the money that we want to gamble over here, then we're just done and we can walk away from it and say, sorry, I already put $50,000 in. I don't want to put my other $50,000 in. I'm giving up. Bye-bye. And one way to do that is to form an entity and make sure that that entity remains separate from me as an individual or as a partnership. You can form a corporation. You can form a nonprofit corporation. You can form, it's very common now to form what's called a limited liability, and you can form a limited liability corporation, which is an LLC, or like at my law firm, we have an LLP, a limited liability partnership. Okay. And they're not hard to do. And I've done them many times. You have to keep things separate. And so this is a business that I formed. This is actually a hair salon business. LLC, Avila's House of Style, LLC. Now, we formed that business, but we wanted to call it something else. What did we call it? Avila's Salon. And what we did was we formed a DBA, doing business as. Let's talk about that for a minute. And what is doing business as? Doing business as is not a separate entity. Okay, let me say that again, because people think if I have Mitchell's Pizza Restaurant, but I don't form an entity, that means I'm not liable. That's not true. Doing business as something is you have to, if it's an entity, you have to do business as, and you have to connect it formally to your entity. Okay. Now, I recently tried to do that and there was no place with, and you do that with the county clerk in which the business is operating, like the Harris County Clerk's Office. They have it's doing business as is also another term for assumed names. ASSUNED, assumed names means the same as doing business as. That is different than forming a corporation or an LLC or an LLP, okay? When you have an LLC or an LLP, and often people do this, so when we had a smaller law firm, my law partner and I formed an LLC. And these are actually our initials. JAN is him, that's John, and MK, Mitchell Katine, is me. So we just put our initials there and we formed this LLC to purchase a small office building. And then what we did was we had our law firm, which was its own entity, an LLP. We rented from this LLC. So we rented from ourselves. And we had to do separate tax returns. We had to keep the money there. We had to do all those things. And it worked well, and it was a really good investment. We sold the building and closed the LLC, and then we divided the profits. It was a 50-50 LLC. And when you, I don't know, have you all ever looked at these books before? Have they ever seen these? Okay, so this is what you get. It's like owning stock in your company. I'll pass this around. So this is, so if we wanted to sell the business, and we did, we didn't sell, we sold the property. We didn't sell the business. We closed the business. These are stock certificates. Looks really nice. And quite frankly, we both took 50% of the profits, and then we went to the state comptroller. I know I'm getting to the end where I'm talking about closing it down, and then we closed down because that was a single asset LLC. The single asset was owning this office building. Once the office building was sold, there was no reason for that asset anymore. I guess if we were going to be buying more real estate, we could have kept it open. It was a very general purpose LLC. And so why did we do that? We did that because if someone got hurt or killed on the property, they could never get to our personal assets. They would only be able to get the asset, which was the building that had a mortgage against it. So normally you form an entity, a corporation, a nonprofit corporation, LLC, LLP, for liability protection and to keep your personal assets separate. Okay? Now, it's very important for you all to remember that liability protection, who can tell me what your best liability protection is? Anybody?
Insurance.
Exactly. Who said that? Insurance. And so, for example, at the Airbnb that I have, it's in my name. It's not an LLC, but I have $1 million umbrella insurance policy. So what that means, I don't only have liability insurance, I bought a little extra policy. It costs $400 or $500 a year for $1 million umbrella policy, because sometimes insurance has all these exceptions and things. And I wanted, in case it has a swimming pool, in case somebody drowned or got hurt, I wanted to have extra insurance. So I have an umbrella policy on that. And I want to encourage you all to look into that if you're going to have a business, talk to your insurance agent about an umbrella policy. And quite frankly, I feel safe with my insurance. So I carry a little more insurance. I do not have a separate entity that owns that. In fact, I'll tell you, Bank of America, when we were buying this property to use as an Airbnb, told me that they would not give me the mortgage as an LLC. And not only that, when we transferred it into our individual name, they had me agree in the mortgage documents that I would never create an LLC and move it into an LLC. They always will, because they're giving me a loan. Think about this. If it was an LLC, then that means I have to have all this collateral and money for them to give me the mortgage, and they would be limited. When you are an LLC, and for example, you want to rent some property, an office building, a grocery store. The landlord, if I was representing the landlord, I would tell the landlord, be careful, because if they skip out on the rent, if you only have an LLC, that's all you can pursue for your money. And so if you're representing the landowner, what am I going to want to get in order to protect the landlord? Come on, what do I want? No, not insurance.
Collateral.
How do you get collateral? Because we just talked, we have an LLC, that's all we can get, right?
Sure.
So what do I want to add to the lease? A personal guarantee, which kind of goes against the whole LLC concept, but I'm not going to rent to you if I can only look to the LLC. The LLC doesn't have any money, but you do. And so I want you, if you want to rent this for the LLC, I want you to sign a personal guarantee. And for you as business owners, be careful when they ask you to sign a personal guarantee, because if something goes wrong and you owe them money, they're going to come after you personally. It kind of does away with the whole LLC concept if you're going to personally guarantee it. So, but it just depends on which side of the deal you're on. Okay. So as far as forming a business goes, you need a name, you need an entity, you need to know how much money am I going to invest in this. It's always best for you to put things in writing so that you're clear, even with friends and family, ladies and gentlemen. I can't tell you how many times things have gone bad with friends and family members. I'm handling a case right now between a mother and a daughter, where a mother bought a lake house and she said, you want some of this? I'll put you on the deed. The daughter didn't pay anything, which is okay. You know that a gift, G-I-F-T, is a legal concept in Texas. And a gift, what a gift is, let me give you the elements of a gift. First of all, a promise to make a gift without any consideration is not enforceable. So if I say to you, at the end of my talk, I'm going to give you this bottle of water. Then the talk ends and I'm walking out. She says, hey, wait a minute. Where's my bottle of water? You said you were going to give that to me. I said, changed my mind. Sorry, you don't get it. Nothing she can do about it. Because in order for a gift to be enforceable, there has to be performance. And if I say to her, I'm giving you that bottle of water, and I give it to her, it now belongs to her. So if now I come back to her and I say, hey guys, I've decided I want to take this back. She could say no. Because once you make delivery of a gift, like jewelry or whatever, it is gone, and the other person owns that. And so in this case that I'm handling between a mother and a daughter, we agree that my client, the daughter, never paid a penny. but her mother gave her half an interest in the lake house. And once a gift is delivered, it's done. So be careful when you give something, unless you're the receiver. And if you're the receiver, say, okay, I hear what you're saying. Go ahead and give it to me. Because until they give it to you, it's not done. Okay, so those are little tips. And of course, between the mother and the daughter, there's nothing in writing. The memory of how this happened is different. We have witnesses, we have people who say that you said you were giving your daughter half of the house, so that all this drama is gonna come in, everybody's spending a lot of money, etc. Also, I know this is gonna sound a little funny, but it's important. Don't sign anything that you don't read or understand. Because when you sign it, you are charged with notice of what it says. Now, I say that, I don't know if you heard, I just got back from Hawaii yesterday. And when I was in Hawaii, one of the things that I liked the best was I went up in a little 2-person little airplane thing, a little motorized flyer. See that? It was pretty cool. I went up to 7,000 feet. Pretty cool. But what I wanted to tell you is I signed everything. It was a 3-page waiver. I had to not only sign it, they had to initial every paragraph. That this could kill you. This is dangerous. If you have a heart condition, blah, 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 blah. And I'm sitting there with my friend and said, you're not reading it. You're not. I said, I know what it is. It's everything. I'm giving up everything. I'm giving up everything. But I made it. I'm alive and all that. But in business, when it comes to money and control, you need to, for example, leases. And you just have to realize when you sign these things, most of them are going to be enforceable. And so be careful what you sign because they mean something. Let's see if there's anything else. I want to just mention, how many people in here are legally married to someone? Raise your hand. Okay, all right. Yeah. So in Texas, first of all, whenever you are legally married, and there's 2 types of marriage. First is the formal marriage where you go and you get a marriage certificate and you have a ceremony and then you file it back with the county clerk. Texas also has common law marriage in Texas. Let me tell you the elements of common law marriage because there's a lot of rumors about what it is. Common law marriage is you live with a person for one night, you have an agreement to be married, and you hold yourself out to third parties as being married. That could be on a lease, a mortgage, a video rental contract. You file tax returns as married. Once you're married in either of those ways, in order to become unmarried, you have to get a divorce in a court. Okay? Once you're married, everything you earn, everything that you acquire is presumed to be community property, and you only own half of it. Are you guys married?
Yes.
Okay. So let's say you, during your marriage, go buy some property and you only put it in your name, whatever your name is. Do you think she owns half of that?
Yes.
She does. Let's say you have a business and you make money and you make $5,000. How much does she get?
2,500.
2,500. Even though the check's only in his name, even though he has a secret bank account That's only in his name. She still owns half of that. Putting it in your name doesn't do anything. If you're married, the law says, unless she never finds out about it, but she can. If you're married, it's 50-50. When you get divorced or die or whatever, 50-50. It doesn't matter whose name it's in. So that goes for businesses too. If you say, okay, look, I'll have my business, I'll have my business, and you both have different businesses. Doesn't matter. You both own half of the other person's business. Okay? So just keep that in mind. All right. All right. We only have a little bit of time today, and that's end of part one. Does anybody have any questions right now about this before we go to part two? Yes.
Could you explain the difference between an LLC and an LLP?
Yes, one is a partnership where you share expenses and income. The other is a corporation where you have a corporate operating agreement, and it doesn't necessarily have to be sharing as a partnership is. That's my best way to do it. Any other questions right now? We'll have questions at the end too. Yes, ma'am.
If you have an existing business that is an LLC and you would like to transition it to another business in a different area,
Uh-huh.
um,
That's okay. Most, if you've opened the business up, most of the time when you open up a business, they ask you for the purpose in the Secretary of State filing. And most of the time we put for any legal purpose.
that's
So-
the generalized one.
That's a generalized one. So when you file your used to be called articles of incorporation, now it's like certificate of formation, where it says purpose, you just put for any lawful purpose. You can have it go for 50 years and change the businesses, whatever you want to do.
And then would you just need a DBA to change the name?
Yeah, you can change the name and do a DBA. Now, again, when I tried to do a DBA in the county clerks, they didn't have a place for LLC. But when I've done it before, like for the hair salon, they let me do it before.
Okay.
So I think there's a way to do it. I just don't know how to do it. Okay? All right. I'm going to move on to part two. Part two is operating your business. The first thing we need to ask is, are you going to have any employees? Because if you start having an employees, there's some additional liability, some obligations, some tax reporting, insurance issues, etc. So locations. Then I have here, you can have, in operating your business, you have all types of potential disputes. You have disputes with your co-owners. You have disputes with customers who may have a claim against you. There, your insurance should come in. You have disputes with lenders, people who are giving you money to operate your business. And then sometimes you have city and county disputes with the health department, if you're going to have a restaurant or going to have a bathroom or parking. Parking can be an issue depending on if there are parking requirements. And then growing your business. Your business is doing well. You want to expand in size. You're going to need space. You may have to get a lease to expand it. Also, I want to talk to you about, remember I told you I'm a real estate lawyer. One of the main areas that I work in every day is dealing with homeowner associations. Do you all know what homeowner associations are? And so one of the issues with homeowner associations that I enforce are people that operate businesses out of their homes. And you have to see what your deed restrictions say, because some of them permit home businesses as long as they don't have customers coming to the house, suppliers, employees, signage. We don't want any signs up. But, you know, like tonight, I brought a file in my car. I'm going to be preparing a lawsuit in my condo. And it's just me writing and reading and thinking. That, I don't think anybody has a problem with that. But if I started, I remember I represented a doctor. He was an eye doctor and he did surgery at the hospital. And he didn't want to really have an office. So he had his patients come to his house and he would do a pre-surgery exam before they went and did surgery. Well, he got sued for having patients coming to his house for operating a business. And the judge ruled against him and said, you can't keep seeing patients in your condo. You know, the deed restrictions often say residential only, no businesses. Some allow you to have some little business there, but be careful if you're doing stuff in your house, because take that seriously. Let me see if I have anything else. It's very important. Let me make sure that I've said this for those of you watching at home. If you're going to have a separate entity, like a corporation, a LLC, an LLP, or a nonprofit corporation, the best advice I can give you, the most important thing for you to know is to make sure to keep all your finances separate from your individual expenses. Okay? If you need more money for your business, do a loan, write a check. Don't just go to your bank account and take money and use it for your business. And do a note back to you, a promissory note. The biggest problem that people get into is they use their business money for personal expenses. Because once you start doing that, your protection of what the reason you formed this for the liability protection, it goes away. When you start operating your business for personal purposes, like groceries and out to dinner and movies and expenses for the kids or whatever, then when I get hurt and I sue you and I don't want to be limited to your business assets, I'm going to say, I'm going to come after I'm going to get your bank account records and I'm going to see all the payments you've made and your credit card records. And I'm going to say, look, you went on a vacation and you charged it to the business. Okay, I'm coming after your bank account. I want all this other money here. And they'll have a good opportunity to do that. That is called piercing the corporate veil. And the biggest reason you can pierce the corporate veil is when you use business money for personal expenses. You need to keep it separate. That's why I'm making such a big deal out of it. Okay? Okay, I do want to keep some time at the end. Let me talk about closing down and selling your business, maybe 5 more minutes, and then we'll open it up for discussion about anything you want while I'm here, okay? I recommend, because if you have one of these businesses, you're going to have to file reports annually and probably tax returns annually for the business, okay? You're probably going to also have to pay franchise taxes and property taxes on the business. So like at our law firm, although we're in an office building, we pay property tax every year on the furniture and the computers and the equipment. Okay, yeah. And we have to pay franchise taxes as well. If you don't pay your franchise taxes, as well as an annual form as to who the president is or the owners, eventually they will invalidate your corporate status. But that is not the same as closing down. When you close down, you fill out a form and you work with your CPA to verify that all debts are paid. And then you go to the Texas Comptroller's office and they will give you a closing statement. Now, I have done that for both of these entities where I've gone through. This is interesting. Remember, I told you that I thought you could do it. I have here, this is the assumed name certificate for, here's the name, the operating the assumed name Avila's Salon and Spa shows that it's owned by Avila's House of Style LLC and it's recorded. So here is proof that I was able to put an assumed name in the name of an LLC. So at least back in 2013. So these are good for 10 years. So this has expired. It was from 2013 to 2023. So again, I still think it's possible to do it, but that's just an example. I know that I've closed these down. I was looking for something from the Texas Comptroller's office. The other thing that you need to do here, this is interesting. So for this salon, you have to make an initial contribution into it. I saved the checks. These are from 2012. We both put $3,000 in, and here's the proof of us doing that. Here's the Texas Comptroller of Public Accounts has registered with their office. So it's kind of fun looking back at these things. Now, I just helped a lady sell her hardware store. Now, what we did was, this was interesting, she kept the LLC, and what we did was an asset purchase. And what we did was we described all the inventory of this hardware store and the amount of money that someone was paying for it. And that included the business name, the ability to take over the lease for the hardware store, and all the equipment and assets in the hardware store. So we simply prepared an asset purchase statement that said for $50,000, you're buying all of this. You're not buying, so that means they're not buying the liabilities or the obligations or even the entity. That stayed with the other person. She got her money. She was able to go and she'll be able to close down the LLC. So there's different ways to sell your business. You can sell, I showed you the thing, if you want to sell the LLC, you can do that. It all depends on the business and what the new owner wants. Do they want to buy everything or are they just buying the assets? So let's do this. Let's open it up for questions and discussions, things that I've talked about and even things that I haven't talked about. If I don't feel comfortable answering your question, if I don't know about it, I'll just tell you that. But this is an opportunity for you to talk to a lawyer for free. So let's talk. What? And you're going to do in Spanish translate?
Yes, I can do the Spanish. Ahorita es el tiempo de preguntas. Pueden preguntarle lo que sea a Mitchell. Aprovechen porque ahorita es gratis. Para preguntarle. Entonces, él nos va a preguntar y yo lo voy a traducir por ahorita.
Yes.
So for the example that you just mentioned about the lady keeping the LLC and then later.
Selling the assets?
Yes, like how is that helpful or what reason would you do that as opposed to just here's the whole thing?
Well, a couple of reasons. First of all, she kept the LLC. She could go and do another business. She sold this operation, all the assets. She doesn't own that anymore. The LLC got a bunch of money and now she may use that same LLC without changing it and go do another business. That's one reason. I'm not sure why She did that and it was a simpler transaction. We didn't have to do any corporate stuff. We just put together a bill of sale and sold the stuff. Now that is considered income for her LLC, so she'll have to pay taxes on that as well.
On the sale,
On the sale of the assets, she sold all her inventory.
that has to be.
Yeah. Okay, other questions about anything? Yes, ma'am.
I'm just curious about the piercing the corporate veil. How far back, let's say you have a corporate bank account. Back in the day, maybe you mixed money, but now you don't do it anymore. Is there like a time limit to where they would be able to go back and be like, oh, you actually mixed funds? Or is it just,
Once you do it, is it forever?
yeah,
I don't think so. So there are two time periods that you all need to know about. The first is, did you want to repeat the question?
Yes. So ella preguntó, por ejemplo, de que, porque cuando tienes un LLC no puedes estar poniendo tu dinero personal en esa cuenta o estar agarrando del LLC para agarrar dinero personal. Entonces, por ejemplo, ¿qué tal si lo hice? Ella preguntó qué tal si ella lo hizo en el pasado, si hay un tiempo de que tiene que pasar para que ya no haya problemas ahora en el futuro, y él ahorita está contestando si hay problemas de que hizo eso hace tiempo, y si ahorita ya, por ejemplo, ya no lo está haciendo, ya no está agarrando dinero ya lo está haciendo, o sea, teniendo las cuentas separadas.
So the two time periods that I want to tell you about is the first one's the most important, and that's the 4-year statute of limitations. For any debt or contract or obligation, Texas has a 4-year limit that once it's older than 4 years, it goes away unless you promise a new promise. So let's say I loan you some money and I tell you I'm going to pay it back to you today. Today's the due date. It can be verbal, it can be writing. And I say to you, I'm sorry, I don't have the money today. I'll pay you next week. And she says, okay, next week. And then next week, and it goes on. If she lets that debt go longer than 4 years before she sues me, it goes away. As long as, like in year 3, if she says, it's been 3 years and you haven't paid me back, are you going to pay me? If I say, okay, I promise I'll pay you. So that's a new promise. But if I don't say that, or if I say, I've never said that, after 4 years, it's too late. So keep that in mind. Okay. For breach of contract, if someone breaches, sometimes the reason I say that is with family members and friends, you feel funny about going after them because they owe you money or whatever. If you wait longer than 4 years, it goes away.
That promise verbally.
The question is, how am I going to prove that you promised that? So if I said that to her, I said, don't worry, it's been 3 years, but I'll pay you next week. If I was her, I'd say, okay, Mitchell, that's fine. Do you mind putting that in a little written agreement that you owe me whatever, and you're going to pay me next week, and sign it and date it? And that'll be fine. Or let's say it's been 5 years and she now knows because she took this class that she can't enforce that. And she sees me out at a club 5 years later, says, hey, Mitchell, where's that money? And I say, oh, I didn't pay you. I thought I paid you. No, you didn't pay me. So, oh, I'm sorry, I'll pay you. Say, okay, great. Let's write it on this napkin. And it's 5 years after. So I don't know that it's too late. But if I renew that obligation and confirm it, now I've promised it, and now the 4 years starts over. So again, I don't know if you're on this side or this side. I just want you to know about this 4-year business. Because a lot of times I told you I do homeowners association work. Sometimes people will call me up and a homeowners association is trying to collect 10 years of assessments because they have this plan that if we're going to wait until they sell their house and then we're going to collect it all at the same time. They can only go back 4 years. Anything older than 4 years is gone unless the person doesn't know and they pay them. But now you all know. The other time period of a general rule for keeping your records and an answer to your question is 7 years. After 7 years, 7 years is for tax returns and financial documents and agreements. And so if you if you early on didn't keep separate records and all that, as I would say, after 7 years of doing that, you've kind of cured that. But I don't really have, I'm not really sure about that. I'm just saying that I think you can, once you've done it correctly for 7 years, you may have cured your problems. Okay, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Okay, so hay
Oh,
dos.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No problem. Hay dos diferentes tipos de tiempos que son muy importantes de mantener. Por ejemplo, 4 años para un contrato. Si tienen 4 años que un contrato es legal, si ya pasa de 4 años, ya el contrato ya no es legal, a menos de que la persona lo vuelva a renovar. Entonces, es importante de que si tienen un contrato de tenerlo firmado, o si ya se va a acabar esos 4 años, de volver a hacer otro nuevo contrato. Otro es los 7 años para cosas, los impuestos. Son 7 años que se están renovando por ejemplo, de que hicieron los impuestos y todo y mantener récord de sus impuestos.
En el caso de que dijo ella de que no mantuvo los gastos de ella personales y de la compañía, ahí qué se puede hacer.
You want to see it?
Él dijo que, que ya como ha pasado, sí, ha pasado ya tiempo como 7 años, pero no está muy seguro. Puede de que ya esté bien.
Ah, ok.
Tengo una pregunta
Sí.
inversa. Si yo usé mi dinero para el negocio, ¿cómo puedo recuperar ese dinero?
That's a question. So he put money for the business, and then now how he can get the money from the business?
Well, first of all, is the money still there?
¿Todavía está ahí el dinero?
Was it a loan?
¿Fue un loan? Oh,
No, lo saqué de mi cuenta para
he put it from
negocio,
his account to the business.
To start the business?
Para empezar el negocio,
para iniciar un proyecto. Sí.
pero fue para empezar el
Sí.
negocio.
So
Yes.
he needs to talk to a CPA, but it sounds like that was a capital investment
Ajá,
and it would be a capital distribution.
okay.
So capital versus profits. So in other words, if he gets his money back, it shouldn't be considered income. It's what he invested in the business.
Okay.
But he needs to talk to a CPA
Él recomienda que hables con un,
because when he's done is it an entity or is it him personally?
Tengo a LLC.
An LLC. Okay, so then all of this, the initial investment is just an investment and it should be able to get it back without him paying taxes on it. But he needs to talk to his CPA about it.
Okay. Dice que más probable puede ser de que, o sea, como fue una inversión que al principio de capital, entonces te puedes regresar el dinero tú mismo. Pero es más recomendable hablar con alguien de los impuestos para además asegurarte que está bien eso.
So I'm going to give another example of our law firm. So our law firm is all of the income that our law firm makes, the partners, we have an LLP, the partners are taxed on, whether we take it or not, doesn't matter.
So, todo el dinero, por ejemplo, él tiene un LLP, todo el dinero que hacen los partners, ellos tienen que pagar impuestos.
So that money is just there in the operating account.
Y ese dinero nada más está ahí para usarlo para operaciones.
So at different times in the year, when we have a lot of money in the operating account, we can get a check and it's called a capital distribution. Profit, it's not really profit, well, it may be because this is income we've already paid taxes on. We're just using it to operate the firm. And if we have too much, we don't need to leave it there. We can take it to then use in our personal lives
Oh, okay.
because we've already paid taxes on it.
Yeah, so you're, okay. So él tiene como, por ejemplo, el LLP y de ellos, de eso tienen que pagar impuestos, pero hay veces de que, o sea, se distribuye ese dinero y no tienen que pagar impuestos porque es dinero extra que está quedando.
Okay. Other questions? Yes, Alex, birthday boy.
Question, how can I find out if my business needs a license for the permit in Texas?
There are agencies. So what kind of business are we talking about? So for example, the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation is one of the largest licensing groups in Texas. It's called the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation in Austin. And you can call them or go on their website and see. But they cover lots and lots and lots of different service organizations. But, you know, that they're not like you need a license to be a CPA or a doctor or a lawyer or so it depends. If you want to know whether it's a regulated business or not, you have to know the type of industry and then find somebody to see if it's regulated. Because your question could be really broad. It could, you know, for example, contractors. There's no such thing as a license for contractors. There are licenses for electricians and plumbers and architects, but yeah, but there's no general contractor license that I know of. And so if someone says, I'm a licensed contractor, who gave you your license? But anybody, you could be a general contractor. There, as far as I know, there is no general contractor license.
So going based on that, so why do you go to school or why do you have to be in that industry for 4 years in order for you to get that contractor license?
There's no such thing.
Just in Texas or just in?
As far as there, I don't know about other states. You don't have to. Yeah, I can tell you I'm a general contractor right now. If you want to hire me to redo your bathroom, let's go.
Because in California, you have to do a 4-year.
No 4 years here. Anybody can call themselves a contractor.
If they're the person who just gets the professional. to do
Correct.
their job. They're just making a deal with you and they're assuming responsibility for the job, but they hire.
Sub
Would you have
license.
some type of license here in Texas?
There's no license to be a contractor.
So maybe they say have a license, but it's the license of the plumber or the license of the electrician, right?
There's no entity that it's regular, just like I think the same thing has to do, I think, with mortgage brokers. That if you want to be a mortgage broker, anybody can do that. You're not a real estate, you can be a mortgage broker.
Don't you need a license for that?
I don't think you do.
Broker.
A real estate broker.
Okay.
I'm talking about someone who wants to get you a mortgage. I think it's an unregulated industry,
But just here in Texas or?
just here in Texas. I don't know what other states do. And quite frankly, somebody asked a question before about transferring an LLC to another state. And you can still operate your Texas one, but these are all Texas entities. This is Texas Secretary of State, Texas Comptroller, things like that. But people get licensed in other states all the time and just do business here.
Okay, I had a question from one of our students, Mitchell. What are the elements of a valid contract and when should a lawyer be involved? Does a contract need to be issued by a lawyer?
A contract does not need to be issued by a lawyer. And a contract simply is a meeting of the minds. A meeting of the minds. That means that you and I are on the same page on what the agreement is. So that the wording, the length, it can be a 1 or 2 sentence contract. It can be a longer contract. We are trying to evidence a meeting of the minds. If it does not appear that there is a meeting of the minds, then there's no enforceable agreement. The signing of a document is simply memorializing that we have agreed to this.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you a real life situation. I represented a owner of a house. The tenant wanted to buy the house. In the document that we were evicting the tenant, okay? At the eviction hearing, we said, the person said, instead of evicting us, let us buy the house. I said, okay. So we, on a single piece of paper, we wrote, Mr. Johnson is interested in buying the house for $700,000. We're going to work on an agreement to sell. And once that agreement is done, then we'll go forward with this. Because when you sell the house, you have escrow money, time, lots of details, okay? We could never, after we left there, reach this formal agreement. So he is suing my client for this agreement, saying that it is a contract, for breach of contract. I'm responding to say, we never had an actual meeting of the minds. It says that this is only preliminary and we're going to have another agreement. Have you ever heard of the term letter of intent?
That was more like intention.
That was like the intention that we were going to try to make a deal. A letter of intent is not enforceable in Texas. It is only to say, yes, you're interested. Yes, I'm interested. Let's try to work this out. It's called a letter of intent. Not enforceable. Did that help?
Yes, it did. What about this one? What is a waiver of liability and when is it needed? What should be a good waiver include? And when should a lawyer be involved? Does it need to be issued by a lawyer?
So a waiver of liability is where someone is concerned that someone might get hurt and you try to have the person sign away their rights. They're generally not very good and you should not rely upon them. You should have insurance to protect you. But if you want to have it, the answer is yes on having a lawyer draft that, because some things need to be in bold print. We repeat them, we say them clearly. But I've never seen one successfully used. Like the waiver of liability I signed to go up in the sky. If I would have died, I hope my family would sue them for whatever happened. And I hope that waiver of liability would not stand up. I don't know if it would or not. I don't know what the law of Hawaii is. So, but if you're concerned about liability, I would have a lawyer draft that. I would have, look, depending on how much money is involved, if it's worth it, it's expensive to hire lawyers. So you want to make sure that it's done properly. That's what you're paying for. I'll share with you, I charge $410 an hour. That's my hourly rate. Okay. That's a lot of money for a lot of people. I know that. So if you're paying me that much money, I want to do my best to whatever I'm doing for you is done properly. Okay. So remember, in 30 days, we're going to make wills and do estate planning in here. And I usually charge people for that. I prepare wills. Just so you know, I charge $400 to do the entire estate plan package. That's a reduced amount just because I want people to have all their documents. But we can still make a simple will for you next week, next month on the 30th. Now, I will tell you in case you're going to come back, I have a jury trial that same day at 8:30 in the morning. So I'm going to have a case and I'm going to try a jury trial that morning, but I'm hoping that I'll be able to get here by 6 o'clock. Now I'll either be very happy with good news or I'll be sad with bad news. Or I may not show up if the case goes longer, but I'm going to try to be here. Okay? All right. I'm sorry?
What documents you will need?
For the will? Okay, so in preparation for next month,
quiero una
What I
compañía
need
bajo
from you is this.
que registrarla también o
I need
tirar
to know an adult
Okay.
who you want to be in charge of your estate when you die, who's going to carry out your wishes. That's the most important thing. And for, I just need their proper, you need to know their proper name. You're going to be writing it. So who do you want to be in charge after you die? Number two is, who do you want to get your stuff after you die? Now, that can be one person, that can be a few people. You can divide it up by percentages. You can divide it up any way you want. The will we're going to make is going to be very simple. So it's going to be, I hereby make my will. I hereby want so-and-so to be my executor. And I hereby leave my entire estate to, now they have to be adults, they have to be over 18 years of age. You can say one person, two people, three people, however you want to do it. And I'm going to give you some other sentences to put in there. Just need to know in your mind who you want to handle your stuff and who do you want to get it. And if you want to get really fancy, you can put alternatives. So I could say that I leave my whole estate to this nice lady, but if she should die before me, then the next person is this gentleman. So that's an alternate beneficiary. If, you know, like if you're, a lot of times people leave it to their spouse or their brother or their sister, and if they're not living, then who you want to go to next. Okay,
Oh, Mitchell. Sorry. She had a quick question.
yes.
So she has an LLC, tiene un LLC, ¿verdad? Pero quiere abrir otro negocio debajo del LLC. She has an LLC, but she wants to open another business under the LLC. How should she make another LLC or DBA or?
If her LLC is opened up for any lawful purpose, she does not have to do that.
Well, she doesn't have to do another business?
No,
No.
if she can use the same LLC.
Puede usar el mismo LLC
But
para ese.
understand, whatever assets are under that first business will be subject to the second business.
Okay.
So if she wants to do it, it's a lot of work and you have to do all these tax returns, the more LLCs you have. So
It's better just to have.
have one.
Dice que recomienda nada más tener un LLC, porque si no es dividirlo entre diferentes impuestos y ya se vuelve un poquito más complicado.
Ah, ok.
Sí, si tienen ya un LLC, a ponerlo todo en el mismo LLC.
Aunque no sea de la diferente, que sea de la misma cosa.
Sí, o sea, puede ser como, porque normalmente cuando abren las LLC es para cosas o sea, algo general, entonces eso lo puede usar para eso.
Si tiene general, no puede.
¿Sí lo tienen ustedes para general? Ok, entonces si lo tienen general, sí lo pueden. La mayoría dijo él que los LLCs lo abren para cosas generales.
Ah, ok.
Sí, porque dijo que sí.
When you order it, dentro de la ley, there's a company.
Porque dice, si no, lo que también le nos explicó es que varias personas tratan de abrir diferentes negocios y luego se complican, ya se hace todo un rollo. Entonces, mejor mantenerlo todo en una.
That's interesting. We just found, so we needed some more money for the note. So here's a unsecured promissory note. Instead of just loaning the money, like for me to remember, we did a little note. We saved a copy. We did an amortization schedule. And I even made a copy of my check to the business. And it says loan 2014. So I loan the money so that when I want to get it back, I know it's repaying the loan. Isn't that cool? Kind of forgot about that.
Oh, and Mitchell, one third question. If someone wants
Another one. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
add their spouse,
Sorry?
if someone wants to add like their wife's or husband's name to the LLC, how can they do that?
Well, is this someone who was not a wife or a husband originally? Like a new wife or a new husband?
I think they were husband and wife before, whenever they opened the LLC. But it was only under the husband's name.
So, what?
Mhm.
So why do they want to, it's already owned by both of them. So, I guess what I would do is some type of written memo that says this is to clarify that although the original LLC was only in Mitchell's name, Mitchell was married and he only owns half of it and the other half is owned by his spouse, so-and-so, and this is just to clarify for the records that we're both owners.
Okay,
It's my only thought,
so like a memo, then
like a memo.
added it. Okay,
And then when you can do, you can file with the Secretary of State, like the officers or the managers and those type of things.
okay.
All right, so this will be our last question because it's getting late and I'm getting hungry. Okay,
I just have a quick question.
Sure.
About like separate property and like spouses.
okay.
If the money that goes into starting the business was separate property, that that's still, it's a separate business, it's not with your spouse.
It's not. The only problem is if you start a business as a separate business, it is a separate business, but if you then get married and you use community money to fund and operate the business, and you were to get a divorce or die, the community estate would have a claim for reimbursement of their share of what they invested. So it can get complicated. Separate property is what you owned before you got married, what you received as a gift. We've talked about gifts today, and also what you inherit through someone dying. All right. Well, I hope you all enjoyed that. I hope you all learned a little something. And I hope you'll come back in 1 month on the last day of July and hear my good news on my case, and we'll talk about estate planning. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And if you have other questions, you can let them know and I'll try to answer them later. Okay?
Okay, thank you so much.
All right. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Alex. All right. See you next month.
There's more pizza, guys, sometimes it's the same. And thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, thank you.
For the balloons for, oh, the wedding.
He's the thing that takes
Some meeting with. Estoy traumada. ¿Qué dices? Porque celebré el birthday. I don't know. Yo creo que siempre me